This video was brought to you by the TLDR animation team and TLDR socials. Get more from TLDR by following us on Instagram and Twitter, where we post explainers that never make it to YouTube. The link is in the description. For most of the modern world, sex work is a taboo subject, but just because we don't talk about it doesn't mean in reality it doesn't happen. With some attitudes towards sex work changing, we thought it'd be interesting to take a look at whether sex work should be legalised in the UK, and if it were, what kind of policy could be put in place. There are basically 5 policy approaches towards sex work, and in order of strictness they are: 1. Criminalisation. Sex work and the associated activities are illegal. This is the case for the entirety of the US except for Nevada. Go figure. 2. The Nordic model. First introduced in Sweden, the Nordic model makes the sale of sexual services legal, but the purchase of those services illegal. 3. The English model. Sex work is legal, but associated activities like brothels and curb crawling are illegal. 4. Legalisation. Sex work and the associated activities we just mentioned are legal but regulated. This is the case in Nevada and places like the Netherlands, where sex work is only legal in certain areas. And 5. Decriminalisation. Prostitution and the associated activities are legal, with no sex work specific regulations. Basically, the only country that does this is New Zealand. Now, most academics and policymakers seem to agree that 1 and 3 just aren't good policies. Making sex work completely illegal just forces it underground and means that sex workers aren't protected by the police or the law. This makes violence and abuse towards sex workers much more likely. For example, Rhode Island accidentally decriminalised indoor sex work in 1980 by rushing through a law that only banned street solicitation. This became public knowledge in 2003 after an infamous district court ruling, and sex work was only recriminalised in 2009. During the period when sex work was openly decriminalised between 2003 and 2009, Rhode Island saw a 31% decrease in rape and a 40% decrease in gonorrhea rates. Gonorrhea, by the way, disproportionately affects sex workers. 23% of women who engage in sex work report having contracted gonorrhea in the past, compared to just 5% of the general female population. But going back to Rhode Island, between 2003 and 2009 there was no equivalent drop-off in other violent crimes, which suggests that it wasn't policing that got better during that time. Rather, criminalising sex work means more violence against sex workers and more STDs. So that's the criminalisation model. The English model is also not particularly popular among academics and sex workers, because banning brothels, which in the UK are defined as any residence that more than one person uses for the purposes of sex work, forces sex workers to work alone, which makes them more susceptible to violence. It also means that while sex work is technically legal, it's very much associated with illegal things, which discourages sex workers from going to the law. A 2015 survey by National Ugly Mugs and Leeds University found that 49% of sex workers were either unconfident or very unconfident that the police would take their report seriously, even though 47% have suffered some kind of harassment or violence at work. So those are the models that academics aren't really fans of. But what about the others? The Nordic model is basically the best option if you want to reduce the amount of sex work in a country. And to recap, the Nordic model makes buying sex illegal but selling sex perfectly legal. The idea here is that by reducing demand you can discourage sex work while affording sex workers legal protection. Because if something goes wrong, sex workers can call the police without worrying about going to jail themselves. The Nordic model was first introduced in Sweden in the year 2000. From 2000 to 2010, Sweden saw a 50% decrease in street sex work compared to a 50% increase in neighbouring Norway and Denmark. And the number of men self-reporting that they pay for sex fell from 13.6% in 1996 to 7.9% in 2008. The Nordic model isn't without its problems though. It still makes sex work illegal, which can discourage sex workers from interacting with the police. And enforcement can often require surveillance of sex workers' residences, which is both expensive and fairly invasive. There's also some dispute about whether it actually reduces sex work. The Swedish National Bureau of Investigation found that from 2009 to 2012, the number of Thai massage parlours in Stockholm had increased from 90 to 250. But perhaps the biggest advantage of the Nordic model is that it's politically popular. It's always garnered 70% support from the Swedish public. And the Nordic model has since been adopted by Norway, Iceland, Canada, France, Israel, Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. The other 2 options are legalisation and decriminalisation. Legalisation involves the regulation of sex work, as has been the case in the Netherlands since the year 2000. Brothels are subject to licensing law, and there are formal employment contracts between brothels and sex workers. Decriminalisation, on the other hand, just means scrapping all prostitution-related laws entirely. This means sex work would be legal but not regulated, so brothels wouldn't need licenses or anything like that. So both approaches accept that sex work will always be around, but those in favour of legalisation argue that the best thing to do is limit it and try and regulate away the nasty bits. The problem with this is that, in practice, it's quite hard to do either. Legalisation still runs the risk of creating an underclass of illegal sex workers, and legal prostitution doesn't really change. A follow-up study in 2007 found that 95% of Dutch sex workers were still self-employed, which basically means that they weren't working in brothels and that there was still the same amount of pimps as before. Worryingly, it also found that drug use among Dutch sex workers actually increased, although, to be fair, this is still just a correlation. Another downside is that, like the Nordic model, legalisation still creates an uneasy relationship between sex workers and the police. There are still illegal sex workers, and legal sex work is still tightly regulated and needs regular inspection. Decriminalisation has an advantage over legalisation in this respect because it's the only model in which sex work is completely legal across the board, which means that, at least in theory, it should provide the most relaxed relationship between the authorities and sex workers. In 2003, New Zealand became the first and to date the only country to decriminalise sex work. While the number of sex workers has stayed the same, sex workers have a far better relationship with the authorities. Polling by the Christchurch School of Medicine found that 57% of New Zealand sex workers found that police attitudes had improved, and 64% said that decriminalisation had made it easier for them to refuse clients. This is why most sex worker unions and organisations advocate for decriminalisation rather than legalisation. But there are perhaps two problems with this method though. Obviously, it doesn't reduce sex work levels. If you think sex work is intrinsically bad or inextricably tied up with other bad things like trafficking and exploitation, then you'll probably prefer the Nordic model, which tries to reduce the amount of sex work. If you see it as a legitimate form of work, then you're probably going to be more sympathetic towards decriminalisation, which most helps sex workers themselves. The second problem is that it's not as politically popular as the Nordic model. Most of the public are pretty moralistic when it comes to stuff like sex work. YouGov polling from 2016 found that 65% of US women and 47% of US men think that sex work is morally wrong. And combined, just 40% of Americans thought that it should be legal. But ultimately, what do you think? Should the UK's policies towards sex work change? And if so, should it be legalised or decriminalised? As always, let us know in the comments down below. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram for more TLDR content. You can just follow the TLDR UK socials or just go wild and follow every single TLDR account. Anyway, following and sharing our posts not only gets you more content from us, but it really helps us out and we really appreciate it. And of course, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we post a video. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible, and if you want to see your name at the end of videos, you too can back us on Patreon. The link to that is in the description. Cheers for listening to me, guys.